Where should we live when we grow old? There comes a moment, often quiet, sometimes sudden, when we look around and realize that life is entering a softer, slower chapter. The children are grown. The house feels quieter than before. Our pace changes, and so do our needs. And in that silence, one question begins to echo louder and louder in the back of our minds. Where should I live now that I'm growing old? With my children? On my own? Or somewhere entirely different? It's not an easy question. And perhaps that's why so few people dare to face it head-on until life forces them to. In many Western cultures, individual independence is seen as a sign of dignity, even in old age. That's why retirement homes and assisted living communities are often embraced without shame. But in Eastern cultures, including Vietnam and much of Asia, there's a powerful belief that aging parents should live under the same roof as their adult children, a symbol of love, gratitude, and family unity. At first glance, both choices seem reasonable. But in today's fast-paced, modern world, things aren't so simple anymore. Generational gaps, different lifestyles, and shifting values have turned this once clear tradition into a deeply personal and complex decision. As a specialist who has worked with thousands of older adults between the ages of 50 and 80, I've seen just how much heartache, misunderstanding, and even resentment can emerge not from lack of love, but from mismatched expectations about how families should live together or apart. So today, I want to walk you through 5 powerful life messages drawn from real stories, cultural reflection, and emotional truth that can help you make this decision with clarity and peace. Because ultimately, this is not just about a place to stay. It's about the kind of life you want to live in your later years, peaceful, respected, connected, and free. Let us begin. 1. Living together isn't always living in harmony. For many generations, living with one's children after retirement was not just expected, it was a symbol of a life well lived. Parents raised their children with love, and in return, children would provide care, comfort, and companionship in old age. In theory, it's a beautiful vision. A full circle moment. A return to the warmth of family. But in reality, things don't always unfold that way. Let me share a story I've heard far too often with different names, faces, and cities, but the same emotional thread. There was a man named Mr. Henry. He had 2 sons, and for most of his life, he worked hard and raised them with a deep sense of duty and sacrifice. His hope, like many parents of his generation, was that one day he would grow old in a home filled with the laughter of grandchildren and the care of his sons. The younger son even chose his wife based on her compatibility with Mr. Henry family. Harmony was their goal. Respect was the foundation. Everyone believed that living together under one roof would bring joy, connection, and shared purpose. And in the beginning, it did. Meals were shared. The house felt alive. Mr. Henry and his wife saw their dream coming true. But slowly, as time passed, the cracks began to show. You see, Mr. Henry came from a time when family dinners were sacred and togetherness meant showing up every night at the same table. But his son and daughter-in-law lived in a world filled with networking events, late meetings, and friendships beyond the family circle. They couldn't always make it home on time. Sometimes they came home late. Other times, they ordered takeout and ate quietly in their room. To Mr. Henry, this felt like neglect. He started to believe his son didn't care anymore. The daughter-in-law, who had once been chosen for her compatibility, now seemed cold, disrespectful, even selfish in his eyes. He voiced his disappointment in passive remarks. He compared her to the daughter-in-law of a neighbor, praising others for their humility and attentiveness. The tension simmered. His son began to feel trapped, torn between defending his wife and respecting his parents. The real conflict erupted when the first grandchild was born. Mr. Henry's wife, now a grandmother, wanted to care for the baby the traditional way. Herbal baths. Sleeping rituals passed down for generations. A firm belief in what had always worked. But the daughter-in-law had other ideas. She followed modern parenting guides. Researched everything online. Trusted doctors over customs. What began as disagreement soon turned into resentment. The new mother felt judged. The grandmother felt dismissed. Every day became a power struggle masked behind smiles. Eventually, the son, overwhelmed and ashamed, began to lash out. He raised his voice. He drank to cope. He broke things when he couldn't contain his anger. What was once a peaceful home became a battlefield of unspoken pain and clashing worlds. In the end, the couple moved out. The dream had shattered. And everyone involved was left holding pieces of blame, sorrow, and regret. This isn't an isolated story. Across cultures, households, and countries, the same question keeps repeating itself. Can two generations with different values, habits, and expectations truly live in the same house without hurting one another? The answer is yes, but only if three things are present: mutual respect, clearly defined boundaries, and the ability to adapt. But those are not easy to cultivate. In most multi-generational households, love isn't the problem. Everyone means well. Everyone believes they are acting from a place of care. But intentions alone don't prevent misunderstandings. What matters more is communication. If parents expect their children to live exactly the way they once did, there will always be disappointment. If children expect their aging parents to be quiet, accepting, and invisible, there will always be resentment. Love must come with space. With permission to live differently. With the humility to learn from one another. That's why some families do make it work. Like the story of Mr. Kwan and his large family in Tai Nguyen. They built separate living quarters within the same property. 2 kitchens. Separate routines. Shared only what they chose to share. Every evening, they gathered around a fire to eat, laugh, and reconnect, but only because during the day, each generation had space to breathe. It's not just about sharing a house. It's about sharing a life. And life, at this stage, needs peace, not pressure. So here is the heart of today's message. Living together doesn't guarantee closeness. And living apart doesn't mean emotional distance. True family harmony is not measured by how many people sleep under one roof. It is measured by how much understanding flows between hearts. And if you are someone considering living with your adult children, or perhaps are already doing so, ask yourself: do we respect each other's way of life? Have we had honest conversations about boundaries and responsibilities? Is our home a place of peace or a source of silent tension? If the answers are unclear, it may be time to revisit the arrangement. Not with guilt. Not with blame. But with wisdom. Because the goal of old age is not to prove anything to tradition or society. It is to live in peace. To love deeply without suffocating each other. You deserve that peace. And your children do too. Let that be the foundation from which every decision flows. 2. Living nearby, not under one roof, a gentle balance of love and space. There's a quiet wisdom that often gets overlooked in our conversations about aging and family. It lies somewhere between the traditional idea of living with your children and the modern push for complete independence. It's not black or white. It's the space in between. That space is called living nearby. Not in the same house. Not far across the country. But close enough to share a meal, exchange a smile, lend a helping hand, or receive one without the constant pressure of overlapping lives. For many older adults, especially those in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, this option has become the golden middle path, emotionally fulfilling, logistically convenient, and emotionally freeing. Let me tell you a story that illustrates this perfectly. In the northern province of Tai Nguyen, Vietnam, there's a family that has quietly become a model for multi-generational harmony, not through sacrifice, but through smart, intentional design. Mr. Kwan and his wife are in their 70s. They live in a modest home that sits right next to the houses of their 2 grown children. One son lives on the left, the other on the right. Though they technically occupy separate houses, the entire property feels like a single shared village. They built their homes close but not touching. Each family has its own kitchen, its own routines, and its own set of household rules. But every evening without fail the courtyard comes alive. A large pot of soup bubbles over the fire. Someone grills sweet corn. Children race around barefoot, chasing each other's laughter. The grandparents sit in lawn chairs, sipping tea and watching it all unfold. We don't live together, Mr. Kwan says with a smile, but we live close enough to love each other freely. What makes their setup work is exactly that, proximity without pressure. The grandparents can be part of their grandchildren's lives, attend birthdays, lend advice when asked. But they don't interfere with how the children are raised. They don't criticize parenting styles or expect traditional customs to override modern routines. They accept that times have changed, and instead of resisting, they adapt. And the children? They, too, benefit. On days when work runs late or emergencies arise, they can count on a reliable helping hand nearby. They don't have to carry the burden of caregiving alone, nor do they have to navigate the emotional stress of daily friction. This model of living close but not together offers a powerful solution for many modern families, particularly when generational expectations are vastly different. Because let's be honest, the world has changed. Today's older adults grew up in an era where family was everything. Togetherness was non-negotiable. Elders were the decision makers, and their wisdom rarely went challenged. But younger generations live in a faster, more complex world. Their parenting methods are influenced by science. Their schedules are defined by career demands. Their privacy is sacred. Their homes are filled with technologies and distractions that didn't exist just a few decades ago. Trying to merge those two worlds into a single household often results in tension. But choosing to live nearby offers something incredibly rare in family dynamics: the ability to remain emotionally close while maintaining individual freedom. It's not a perfect solution for every family, but it's one that more and more older adults are choosing, and for good reason. Consider the case of Mrs. Nga and her husband in Hanoi. They have 2 sons, both married and living in the city. When each son got married, Mrs. Nga gently but firmly told them, "You need your own space." So do we. At first, her sons protested. They wanted to stay close, to make sure their parents felt supported. But Mrs. Nga remembered her own days as a daughter-in-law, sharing a kitchen with her mother-in-law, feeling suffocated by constant observation, unable to raise her children the way she believed was best. She didn't want that for her daughters-in-law. And she didn't want that for herself. So she helped each of her sons find their own homes. One lived 10 miles away. The other moved into a condo next door. She set boundaries early: "We are here for you. But we also want to live our own lives." Years later, Mrs. Nga has no regrets. Her grandkids visit every weekend. The house is still full of laughter. But when the front door closes, she and her husband retreat to their peaceful living room, surrounded by memories, not noise. They read, garden, sip tea in silence. And when they need help, or when help is needed, they are close enough to show up in minutes. This kind of living arrangement might not look traditional. But it's deeply respectful. It honors the needs of both generations. It allows love to flourish without control. And most importantly, it gives older adults something they rarely speak about out loud: dignity. Because here's something not often said enough in our culture: wanting your own space doesn't make you selfish. It makes you wise. It means you understand the emotional weight of cohabitation. It means you value peace over appearances. And it means you trust your children enough to let them live their lives while still remaining part of yours. There's also a hidden benefit here that few anticipate: emotional anticipation. When you don't see each other every single day, your moments together become more intentional. A Sunday dinner becomes an event. A phone call becomes a meaningful check-in. The little things feel bigger because they are no longer taken for granted. And let's not forget this important truth: just because someone lives with you doesn't mean they are emotionally available. There are elderly parents who live under the same roof as their children yet feel completely invisible. And there are others, living 5 minutes away, who feel deeply connected and loved. So if you're at that stage in life where you're thinking about the future, whether it's you making the decision or your children suggesting options, don't be afraid to consider this middle path. You don't have to live in the same house to be a close family. You just need to be close in intention. Close in communication. Close in care. It's also a powerful act of self-care. Living in your own home, with your own routines, allows you to stay connected to your identity. You can wake up when you please. Cook what you enjoy. Decorate how you want. Invite friends over without needing permission. These things may sound simple, but in old age, they become sacred. They help you feel like yourself, not just someone's parent or grandparent, but a person with your own rhythms and rituals. For some, this balance also includes having a caregiver or housekeeper help out during the week. Others choose to live in retirement communities located near their children's homes. What matters is not the exact arrangement but the intention behind it. That intention should be rooted in love, respect, and clarity. Clarity about boundaries. Clarity about roles. Clarity about the kind of life you want to live. Because the ultimate goal of aging isn't dependency, it's freedom with connection. It's waking up each morning and knowing that you are safe, supported, and still in control of your own life. So if you're wondering whether moving in with your children is the right choice, pause for a moment. Consider what living nearby might offer you. A little more space. A little more freedom. A lot more peace. And perhaps that peace is the greatest gift you can give to both yourself and your family. 3. Choosing to live alone when solitude becomes strength. There's a certain silence that visits us more often with age. It arrives softly, like a quiet companion. For some, it brings peace. For others, it brings fear. That silence is called solitude. And how we embrace or resist it shapes the quality of our later years. In many cultures, especially across Asia, the thought of an elderly parent living alone is still met with unease. It can trigger questions about family duty, fear of loneliness, or judgment from outsiders. People whisper things like, "Why is she living alone?" Or "Where are her children?" As though solitude were a punishment rather than a personal choice. But in truth, for many older adults today, choosing to live alone is not a sign of being abandoned. It's a sign of clarity. Of maturity. Of knowing oneself so well that you can create a life of comfort, order, and joy entirely on your own terms. Take the story of Mrs. Lathai Ngan, a 72-year-old retired teacher living in the countryside outside Hanoi. Her 2 sons are successful professionals. One lives in a spacious apartment in the city, the other owns a luxurious townhouse. Both have asked their mother countless times to move in. But every time, she declines. "Why?" they ask. "Don't you feel lonely here?" And she always answers with a gentle smile, "I feel free here." In her small home, she wakes when the birds begin to sing. She tends to a garden. She has friends who drop by for tea. She walks to the market, exchanges stories, laughs with her neighbors, and lives in rhythm with her village. She tried city life once briefly. When her youngest got married, she agreed to spend a few weeks in their high-rise apartment. But the reality was nothing like she had imagined. The building was modern, yes. But the air was still. The neighbors were strangers. The days felt long. Her children left for work early and returned late. And when they were home, they were absorbed in screens, phones, laptops, televisions. "I was surrounded by people, but no one really saw me," she told me once. So she returned home. Alone but not lonely. Because solitude, when chosen, is not isolation. It's peace. And she is not the only one. There is an entire generation of older adults now quietly rewriting the narrative of aging. They are saying, "I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to lose myself in someone else's house. I want to stay independent for as long as I can." And they are doing it not out of pride, but out of deep self-respect. Some hire help during the day. Others rely on community groups or local churches. Many stay active in social clubs, cultural centers, or online communities designed just for seniors. They aren't rejecting their children. They are simply reclaiming their lives. In fact, studies from aging research centers across the US have shown that older adults who maintain a sense of autonomy are significantly more likely to report higher levels of happiness and lower levels of depression, even when living alone. Autonomy builds confidence. Confidence builds well-being. Of course, living alone isn't always easy. There are quiet nights. There are illnesses. There are moments when reaching for a glass of water feels harder than it used to. But these challenges are often outweighed by the sense of control, dignity, and emotional stability that independence brings. And with thoughtful planning, those risks can be managed. Many older adults prepare in advance. They downsize their homes to one-story residences. Install grab bars. Keep emergency contacts in easy-to-reach places. Set up weekly check-ins with neighbors or relatives. They create a life that supports them, not isolates them. One couple who did this beautifully is Mr. and Mrs. Vin. They had 2 sons, both working in Hanoi. When the sons started families, the parents made a firm but loving decision: we'll stay in our home and you will stay in yours. When the younger son needed a place to stay before buying a house, Mr. Vin agreed on one condition. You have 3 months, he said kindly. After that, it's time to stand on your own feet. He wasn't pushing them away. He was protecting the space he and his wife had built. Their rhythm. Their peace. Now, both sons live nearby. They visit often. But Mr. and Mrs. Vin still live exactly as they always have, on their terms. Because for them, independence isn't just about where they sleep. It's about how they live. And here lies the heart of this message. Living alone doesn't mean you're unloved. It means you love yourself enough to build a life that feels right for you. The fear of loneliness is real. But we must also remember that loneliness can exist even in crowded rooms, even in busy households. What matters is not how many people surround you, but whether you feel seen, valued, and respected in the space you inhabit. For some, living with children brings that feeling. For others, living alone preserves it. There's no one right answer. But what's deeply important is to remove the shame from choosing solitude. It is not shameful to prioritize your peace. It is not ungrateful to want your own space. It is not selfish to say, this is how I want to live. It is courageous. It is wise. It is human. And if your children truly love you, and most do, they will come to understand. At first, they may resist. They may worry. They may try to convince you otherwise. But in time, your happiness will speak louder than their concern. You will become a quiet role model, showing them that aging is not about giving up power, but about using it more gracefully. You'll also teach them something even more valuable, that love doesn't mean control. It means honoring someone's choice, even when it's different from your own. So, if you are someone in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, wondering what the next chapter should look like, I encourage you to ask yourself this question. What does peace look like for me? And if the answer includes a little house, a garden, a radio, some books, a few good friends, and a door you can open or close at will, then honor that. Build it. Live it. You have earned the right to design your life. You've spent decades caring for others. Now, it's time to care for yourself, not selfishly, but wisely. Not with fear, but with clarity. And always remember, solitude is not the absence of love. It is the presence of self. So here's to the elders who choose to live alone, and in doing so, live more fully. May your days be filled with quiet strength, your evenings with gentle reflection, and your heart with the quiet joy of a life lived on your terms. 4. Moving into a senior home, a decision of courage, not rejection. There are certain phrases that carry enormous emotional weight as we grow older. One of the heaviest is this: going into a nursing home. For many, those words sound like surrender. Like giving up on family. Like being forgotten. But what if we've misunderstood them? What if moving into a senior home isn't a sign of weakness or abandonment, but rather a deeply wise, courageous, and thoughtful decision, a way to reclaim dignity, independence, and peace at a time when life requires new forms of support? Let me share with you a story I've never forgotten. Mrs. Anna, a widow in her early 70s, had always been the backbone of her family. After her husband passed away, she continued to host gatherings, take care of the grandchildren, and maintain her home. But over time, her joints began to ache more persistently. Her sleep was interrupted by pain. Cooking became a chore. Climbing stairs exhausted her. Her children offered to move her in. They had good intentions. But she knew how their lives worked. Their apartments were small. Their days were long. Their attention was split between work, parenting, and the daily pressure of modern life. And deep down, she knew something even harder to admit: if she moved in with them, she'd be more alone than ever. Because being present in a home doesn't always mean being connected. So one day, she made a decision that surprised everyone. She sold her home and used her pension to move into a private senior living center nearby. Her children were stunned. Some relatives whispered. The neighbors asked, "Is everything okay? Why would she go there when she has children?" But Mrs. Mann was calm. She explained gently, "This is not about my children abandoning me. It's about me choosing to live where I can feel alive again." At the senior home, she was surrounded by people her age. They talked about music from their youth. They played chess in the afternoon sun. They shared laughter over soup and tea. Nurses helped her manage her health. Caregivers checked in every few hours. She had friends. She had community. She had dignity. Her children visited every weekend. On holidays, she spent time at their homes. But each time, she returned to her little room at the center with a sense of peace. "This is where I belong now," she told me. "It's not about leaving them behind. It's about finding a place where I am no longer just tolerated, but understood." And she is not alone in this journey. More and more seniors across the world are choosing to live in assisted living facilities, not because they've been cast aside, but because they are actively shaping the last chapters of their lives. This isn't giving up. It's growing up again. Because aging is not just about surviving. It's about living meaningfully, even if that means reimagining what home looks like. Let's break a common myth here. Moving into a senior home is not the same as being abandoned. Many children love their parents deeply but are simply overwhelmed by the demands of modern life. Juggling jobs, parenting, mortgages, and personal struggles, caring full-time for an aging parent is not always feasible, even with the best intentions. And the guilt that both generations feel can be quietly destructive. In contrast, a well-run senior home provides structure, safety, medical care, social interaction, and routine, all essential for physical and emotional well-being in later life. In fact, studies from gerontology institutions in the United States show that seniors in assisted living facilities often enjoy higher levels of social engagement, better nutrition, and more consistent health monitoring than those aging alone at home. They attend group classes, celebrate birthdays with peers, share meals, participate in cultural events, and most importantly, they no longer feel like a burden. Mr. Vu Din Lan, a retired military officer from Tai Bin, is a perfect example. After his wife passed away, he lived alone in the countryside for some time. His only son, who lived in the city, kept urging him to move in. And so he tried. For 2 years, Mr. Lan lived with his son, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren in a bustling urban apartment. He appreciated the effort. But something in him began to fade. He rarely left the house. He couldn't connect with anyone. His days blended together. The city noise gave him headaches. He missed the sound of birds and the quiet dignity of his own space. Then one day, while watching TV, he saw a documentary on senior living homes. He did his research. He chose a place that offered a community garden, Tai Chi classes, 24-hour care, and shared meals. He visited once, then again. And finally, he told his son, "Let me try it for 3 months." That was 3 years ago. Now, Mr. Lan is thriving. His Parkinson's is better managed. He has a group of friends. He walks more, laughs more, feels more. This isn't a home for the forgotten, he says. It's a home for those ready to live again. And when his son visits, there's no tension. No guilt. Only stories, smiles, and deep, mutual respect. Because both generations understand something vital, care isn't only about proximity. It's about presence, choice, and emotional honesty. So if you or someone you love is considering moving into a senior living community, know this. You are not giving up on family. You are not breaking tradition. You are not becoming invisible. You are choosing a life that honors your needs. You are embracing a space that can support your well-being. You are saying yes to comfort, connection, and care on your own terms. It takes courage to make that choice, especially in societies where appearances matter deeply. But real courage is quiet. It doesn't always make sense to others. It only needs to make sense to you. Of course, not all nursing homes are created equal. It's important to visit, ask questions, meet staff, and observe how residents are treated. A good facility feels like a village, not a warehouse. A place where elders are seen as individuals, not patients. Where your name is remembered. Where your stories matter. The best homes offer flexibility, rooms you can decorate, activities you can choose, privacy you can protect. And most of all, they offer you something most seniors crave but don't always voice out loud: reliability. You wake up and breakfast is waiting. You fall ill and someone notices. You feel sad and someone listens. You need help and someone is already there. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. Because aging well is not about doing everything by yourself until the very end. It's about knowing when to ask for help and from whom. Some of the most fulfilled seniors I've met were those who entered a senior home not out of desperation, but out of foresight. They planned. They saved. They chose. And in doing so, they gave themselves and their children a gift, freedom from fear and freedom to love without resentment. So if you're still unsure, still feeling torn between staying home and moving into assisted living, ask yourself this. What kind of life will bring me peace, joy, and dignity in the years ahead? If the answer includes professional care, daily companionship, and a safe, welcoming space, then don't let outdated beliefs stop you. You are not betraying your culture. You are honoring your truth. And that may be the greatest legacy you leave behind, showing your children that aging doesn't have to mean disappearing. It can mean choosing, creating, growing right up to the very end. 5. In the end, it's not where you live, it's how you live that matters most. By the time we reach our later years, we've spent decades taking care of others. We've raised children, managed households, built careers, carried burdens no one ever saw. And through it all, we dreamed of one simple wish for the future, peace. But peace doesn't come from one perfect decision. It comes from clarity, knowing what truly matters at this stage of life. Throughout this journey, we've explored many different ways of living as we age. Some choose to live with their children, cherishing daily moments together. Others prefer to live nearby, creating space for both love and independence. Many decide to live completely on their own, reclaiming the freedom they had set aside for years. And some find comfort, care, and community in a senior living center. These are not just lifestyle choices. They are expressions of values. Reflections of what each individual needs most to feel safe, respected, and whole. So let me ask you gently, what do you need most now, not 10 years ago, not what others expect, but today? That answer, my friend, is your compass. For some, the answer will be connection. The sound of grandchildren laughing in the next room. Shared meals. The quiet ritual of evening tea with loved ones. For others, the answer is solitude. A room to themselves. The ability to read, rest, and reflect without interruption. The dignity of managing their day on their own schedule. And for many, the answer is support. Knowing someone is nearby if they fall. Having a helping hand when health changes. Being surrounded by people who understand the physical, emotional, and spiritual transitions of aging. There is no wrong answer. The only mistake is ignoring your own truth to satisfy someone else's comfort. One of the most profound lessons I've learned in over 20 years of working with older adults is this: aging doesn't take away your right to choose. It reminds you to choose wisely. Let me tell you about Mr. Alex, a retired librarian in his late 70s. He lived alone for many years after his wife passed. He had 2 grown daughters who constantly begged him to move in. "We'll take care of you," they promised. But Mr. Alex had a quiet wisdom about him. He loved books, jazz, long mornings with tea. He cherished silence not because he was lonely, but because it gave him space to remember, to feel, and to dream. One day, during a holiday visit, his youngest daughter tearfully asked, "Don't you miss us? Don't you want to live with your grandchildren?" And Mr. Alex smiled, patted her hand, and said, "Sweetheart, missing someone doesn't mean I need to be in the same room. It just means I love you enough to let you live freely, and I ask the same in return." That moment changed everything for her. She realized her father wasn't rejecting family. He was protecting his peace. And in doing so, he was showing her how to grow old with grace. You see, growing older is not about shrinking into silence. It's about stepping more fully into your truth, whether that truth is noisy or quiet, surrounded or solitary. And yet, many elders feel trapped not by circumstances, but by expectations. They fear judgment. They fear being called selfish for wanting space. Or ungrateful for choosing not to live with their children. Or shameful for considering assisted living. But those fears are born from outdated beliefs, not from reality. Because real love, mature, generous love does not demand sacrifice without understanding. It listens. It respects. It adapts. So if you are wrestling with this decision where to live, how to arrange your final chapters, one invite you to stop asking, what do others want from me? Instead, ask, what do I want for myself? That is not a selfish question. It's a sacred one. Because here's the truth that we so often forget. You are still the author of your own life. Even now. Especially now. You get to decide where you live. Who you live with. What makes your days feel meaningful? What kind of rhythm brings you calm? What kind of care brings you comfort? You get to say yes. You also get to say no. That's not rebellion. That's wisdom. And no matter what you choose, whether it's moving in with your daughter, living a few blocks away, staying in your own home, or transitioning into a senior care center, what matters most is that you choose from a place of self-knowledge, not pressure. Because at this stage of life, your greatest responsibility is no longer to raise others. It is to protect your peace. And when you protect your peace, you give your children a beautiful example of healthy aging. You show them that elderhood is not a burden. It's a transition. It's a chance to live more simply, more truthfully, and more freely. You show them that letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting life to unfold with gentleness. It means releasing control over things that once seemed so important. It means leaning into what brings you joy without apology. And joy, at this age, is not loud. It is quiet. It is soft. It is found in little things. The first sip of tea in the morning. A bird at your window. A memory that brings a smile. The sound of your grandchild's voice on the phone. The comfort of knowing your choices still matter. So let this final message be a reminder. It's not where you live that defines the quality of your life, it's how you live. With whom do you feel respected? In what space do you feel most like yourself? What brings you ease, not just physically, but emotionally? Make your choice from there. And if others question it, let your peace be your answer. You have lived long enough to know what matters. You have earned the right to choose ease over obligation. You have every reason to trust your heart. Because when you live in alignment with your truth, there is no wrong place. Every room becomes a home. Every day becomes a gift. And every step forward becomes a quiet celebration of the life you've built with love, courage, and wisdom. From our hearts to yours. If these words have resonated with you today, if they've stirred memories, comforted fears, or helped you find a little more clarity about the future, I gently invite you to stay with us on this journey. We believe that growing older is not the end of anything. It's the beginning of something deeply meaningful. So if this message spoke to you, please consider subscribing to our channel. Share your thoughts in the comments. Let us know. Where do you feel most at home? What does aging with dignity mean to you? And don't forget to explore the rest of our videos. Each one is crafted with care, inspired by your stories, and designed to support you in living a life that is not just longer but richer, softer, and truer. Thank you for spending your precious time with us. We honor you. We walk beside you. And we wish you a peaceful, purposeful, and joy-filled day ahead. See you in the next video. Until then, may every sunrise bring you strength and every sunset bring you peace.